most of you guys probably know Tony Morris. Anthony Morris is the guy on screen here. He's an ex-governing body member of Jehovah's Witnesses. February 22nd, 2023, he was kicked out of the governing body officially, and this is the announcement on Jehovah's Witnesses webpage. It was not on the main page even. You had to click through to announcements. On Wednesday, February 22nd, 2023, it was announced at World Headquarters that Brother Anthony Morris III is no longer serving as member of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. This is a really, really big deal when this happened, because governing body members aren't just fired like that. They don't just resign. They stay in that position until they die. God, my cat sneezed. It just scared me. They stay in that position until they die, literally up to the moment that they die. And an ex-governing body member, Ray Franz, left the religion completely in the 90s, or 80s, in the early 80s. And he wrote a whole book about it, left the religion and said that they were corrupt and it was a problem. And he basically said in the book, he told us how the governing body works. They needed 2/3 majority, I believe, to make any major decisions. So everybody in the ex-Jehovah's Witness community is like trying to figure out, why was Tony Morris fired? What happened? Based on this announcement, it says, Brother Anthony Morris III is no longer serving as a member. Brother Anthony Morris III. That means that he probably hasn't left the religion. He's likely still in it, if they're calling him Brother Anthony Morris. But they removed all of his morning worship videos from the website, like the day that it happened. Bizarrely. Are those videos not like spiritual food like they claim? Any videos produced by a governing body member that was still in the religion and still considered valuable would stay on the website. It would still be spiritual food. So I have to assume Tony Morris was kicked out by force. Leading up to his firing, Jehovah's Witnesses brought in 2 new governing body members, which shook things up in its own right, because they have a running prophecy going right now that's going to fail in the next 15 years, I would say, maximum. The governing body members that are on there right now were expected to be there until the end. Why are they adding new ones? This made no sense to anybody. So anyways, they bring in 2 new governing body members. Jeffrey Winder and something Flegel was the guy's name. Anyway, so Winder and Flegel joined the governing body. Tony Morris is kicked out within like a month of that or something. And everything is like the religion is scrubbed of his presence, okay? So obviously there's some kind of civil war happening in the Jehovah's Witness religion. So I start going back and looking at some of Tony Morris's more famous proclamations, if you will. Tony Morris, okay, when Jehovah's Witnesses have a change that they want to present to the other people, they call it new light, and it's a big to-do. It's a big thing. When they're about to release new light, they make a big deal out of it. Quick note before we continue, I'm writing a book about my experiences inside the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses. I cover the culture and doctrine. It's understandable even if you know literally nothing about the religion, so I'd appreciate it if you gave it a read. To find out more, go to owenmorgan.com/book. All links are in the description, of course. Okay, back to the video. Anyways, in one of the videos with this guy, I forget, this is Jeffrey Winder. One of the videos he did, he says that they're about to announce new light, and it's a big deal. Everybody should be excited about it. The new light that they were about to announce, that they announced very recently, is that beards are now allowed, and people can see the end happening. Like, they can see the events leading up to the tribulation unfold, and then change their mind and join the religion again, and they will survive. Up until recently, the belief was that if they're outside the religion when the Great Tribulation starts, then it means that they're out of luck. They're going to die. That's it. The sign that the Great Tribulation is here is that the world governments all turn on religion completely. And God is going to use the United Nations to seek out and destroy all religion. So anyways, when you see that happening, up until recently, if that happens and you're not in the religion, that's it, you're done. But they changed that to say it's okay, you can rejoin even after seeing the evidence, which is a really, really big deal, right? Tony Morris, though, seemed to have this bizarre habit of reversing doctrine and introducing new light seemingly out of nowhere and without consulting anybody. It was strange. So here's an example of it. Up until Tony Morris said this, the position was, we don't know. The position was, we don't know who's going to make it through Armageddon and into the new system. God is going to judge people's heart conditions. That's what it was when I was little. And then Tony Morris, I think this one is 2018. It's January 13th, 2018. Tony Morris comes out here and he says this in a talk to Trinidad, I think. Also, by the way, while we listen to these videos and stuff, I have a video I want to listen to in a second outside of this one. We're going to play some Breath of the Wild 2. Should just be in the background. If you've never seen it, won't bother you too much. All right, listen to Tony Morris fabricate new light on the spot.
So you just take a look, and this is the idea Jehovah is getting across, at your hands. And you look at your hands now, only God, as he looks at your hands in here and all those that are tied in, does he see blood there?
Okay, so Tony Morris, it's subtle here, but what he's doing is acknowledging the old position that, the position that the governing body currently holds up to the moment that he is saying these words. God is going to judge. He's going to decide if you did the right thing or whatever, you were a good person. But he adds on to it.
The humans sitting next to you, they might have an idea because they know you well and you haven't been out in service in weeks. Well, guess what? Most likely God's seeing some blood all over your hands. Or they go totally inactive and we appeal to him, we try to help, but you cannot water down what God says here.
That is so incredibly fascinating. So he acknowledged the previous position. God will judge. We don't know who's going to make it through. And then he warped that position to be, oh my God, I can't believe I did that just now. And then he warped that position to be, if you don't knock on doors, then you will not make it into the new system. God isn't going to judge whether or not you're worthy of being in the new system. He's going to judge whether or not you followed the directions and expectations of the governing body. That's very, very different. So Tony Morris had a habit of coming out and saying things like that randomly without, he was just coming up with new light. And he came up with a bunch of new light inexplicably and without warning anybody. Just comes out here and he says stuff like this. And it took people by surprise. It took me by surprise at the very least. I don't know about other governing body members. Usually they do the announcements for new light at the conventions. He's just coming out here and laying it down. This is an old one. This is from November 8th, 2014. I believe he was at a convention. I'm not 100% sure, but God, this talk is one of his strangest. You could call this new light. This information he's about to give to us didn't exist within the religion until he laid it down. Listen to this one. Quick interjection. This won't take long. If you like what I do, it would be awesome if you guys checked out my Patreon. All links are in the description, of course. Okay, back to the video.
Now, I have to mention this.
Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. No one has seen Tony Morris, by the way. I fully expected the guy to appear when the memorial rolled around because he's required as an anointed person to take communion, basically. It's, like a Bible command or whatever. You must take communion. For Tony Morris specifically, not for every Jehovah's Witness, only about 20,000 unique ones. So I thought for sure he would surface in like March or April, a couple months after like leaving the governing body, but the dude has not been seen. Nobody has any idea where he is. Anyway, just listen to what he has to say here.
Now, I have to mention this, something I've observed. I see it in the airports, but burly women, okay, this is what they do. And it's
Did he say burly women?
all deteriorating, but sometimes even some of our sisters now. And I suppose
Worldly women. Okay, he said worldly women. I'm sorry, I was so confused. It's bad quality. Forgive me.
sisters now. And I suppose, and they're probably really lovers of God and such, but you're not thinking of this verse. And what it is this Spanx, this skin-tight stuff they wear.
I had never heard of Spanx before he used the term, and it's a deeply cringy term to me.
Now, are any sisters wearing it in the ministry? No. I can't say I've ever seen that. But when they exercise, they leave their home and they're jogging in this stuff.
Okay, so it sounds like Tony Morris's problem is women wearing basically like yoga pants, right? Just tight pants, like pants that go around your body that are tight or whatever. He has a problem with that when they're jogging. You're not allowed to jog in those pants because it's not modest, apparently.
Look at
By the way, this is famously known as his like tight pants talk. 2014 is when it really got bad.
Look at the verse. Is that appropriate to wear skin-tight Spanx or whatever they call it? That's not modest, and it's certainly not sound of mind. It's really not appropriate. There's nothing else to say about it. Now, you want to be in your home or your room and wear that stuff, that's your business. But don't go out in public like that and say you worship the true God. I'm just trying to stay in shape.
Like, this is such a strange hill to die on, right? This isn't, I don't know, is this considered new light? Technically, maybe not. Because he's just like reinforcing the existing light that was dress modestly. But he's like going way over the top with it. People weren't barred from wearing yoga pants before. They were barred from practicing yoga. But the pants you wear when doing aforementioned yoga exercises are A-okay, apparently. So anyways, this is a really big deal that he came out and did this.
Inappropriate.
Oh, it gets worse too. You think it's bad right now? Just wait.
And the other one that needs addressing is for these young fellas, because the older ones aren't doing much of it, thankfully. It's the metrosexual look. We've addressed that in the past. We've said things about it, but
I don't remember what the metrosexual look was. What was define metrosexual? Relating to or denoting men who live in urban areas and enjoy shopping, fashion, and similar interests traditionally associated with women or gay men. Oh, so it's just you dress nice and you like shopping and you're, like fashion and stuff like that. That's what a metrosexual is. Okay, go on.
what's happened now is really caught on more. Now, metrosexual, that...
Sorry, Starfield says, I will make Tony proud. No pants. That's good. Okay.
Metrosexual, that's the tight suit jacket and the tight pants. Better known as tight pants.
Okay, he's acting like this is like a brand or something. Like, I've never heard of anybody getting upset over tight pants before. People laughing at this because it's so ridiculous.
And they are tight, I mean tight, all the way down to the ankles. And that is not modest, brothers. No. It's not appropriate. It's not sound of mind. And I was proud of one circuit overseer who told me this past summer at one of the international conventions, because he brought it up, one of these fellas shows up for his circuit overseer visit, and he wants to go out to ministry, work with him, door to door, and he's wearing tight pants.
Okay, so a circuit overseer is a traveling guy that goes from congregation to congregation. I don't know, once every month or every 6 weeks or something. I guess it depends on how big the circuit is. You'll get a visit from the circuit overseer. He'll give a talk on Sunday, and he'll go out in service, door knocking with the younger people to try to get them excited and interested in being a part of this. Take a special interest in younger people. And, I remember going in service with multiple circuit overseers when I was younger. It's a privilege because they're like Jehovah's chosen people or whatever, right? So a circuit overseer is supposed to take special interest in young people and get them invested in the religion. And Tony Morris is describing what a circuit overseer should really be doing, okay?
And the circuit overseer was man enough, spiritual man enough to say, no.
Because he saw a dude wearing pants that were a little tighter than Tony Morris is comfortable with, and I get that's just unacceptable in his mind. Wow, dude.
The circuit overseer was man enough, spiritual man enough to say, no, I'm not going door to door with you. Mm-mm.
Imagine being in the religion and hearing that. Imagine wanting to be a part of, the circuit overseer's visit and take part in all this stuff. And the circuit overseer says no, like that. My God.
Not with that.
That would be crushing. Seriously. You guys don't know how deep this stuff goes. If you haven't been Jehovah's Witness, it goes deep. It's like the greatest honor one can experience to be chosen by the circuit overseer to go in service.
Dress on. Inappropriate. So a lot to think about, and you elders out there listening in, and be kind now. We always want to try to imitate Christ Jesus. You be spiritual man enough to tell these young fellas, you don't go out in the ministry looking like that. Not in this organization. And frankly, I have asked sister after sister, what do you think of this? Do you find that appealing, attractive? I'm just curious.
I'm sure that, women are not going to feel right about telling a governing body member what they find attractive. What they find attractive is their husband, and that's all there is to it. That's how it should be in their minds, right? No matter who he asks or how the question is phrased, he's not getting an honest answer, period. It's not happening.
Do you find that appealing, attractive? I'm just curious, because I'm not a woman. And you know what? I've not met one yet that thought they look good. But like I've been telling others, and this is a fact, the homosexuals
oh boy,
that are designing these clothes, they like you in tight pants.
He thinks that gay people are designing tight pants because they enjoy seeing dudes wearing tight pants. What?
Who likes it? Not spiritual people. So this is something to consider with dress and grooming. Is it appropriate? Is it modest? Does it display soundness of mind? If not, do something about it. If you're a spiritual family.
Jesus, dude. Oh my God. So he kept coming out of the woodwork saying bizarre stuff like that and taking a stand on the strangest issues. Why do you even care about this stuff? Oh my God, right? So it seems to me that since he's left the organization, the governing body members that are currently on there, it appears like they're trying to reverse the damage that he did now, in my opinion. They're trying to go back and change the positions that he locked them into without permission, effectively. So Jeffrey Winder, this is a new governing body member. He came out here to talk about modesty, quote unquote, dressing modestly. He's either refining or slightly modifying Tony Morris's positions, because Tony Morris is the one that talked about, tight pants before. He's just obsessed with them. So let's see what he says here.
Is modesty.
Sorry, let me step back. Let's start at the beginning here.
Well, the quality we're talking about this morning is modesty. And one of the most powerful reasons for displaying modesty is that it benefits others. Why can we say that? That one of the most powerful reasons for displaying modesty is that it benefits others. It's because of Jesus' words here in the book of Matthew, chapter 22. And let's read together verse 39. Matthew 22, of course, in verse 37, Jesus helps us to see that the greatest commandment of the law is to love Jehovah. And without a doubt, a modest course pleases Jehovah.
Wow, that is a stretch. Did you catch what this dude just said? He said, he's talking about the laws that Jesus laid down, like the new laws, instead of the 10 commandments, or the 613 commandments, really, like all of the old law. Instead of those, you have to follow 2 new ones, and Jesus distilled them. And these are the commands that Christians follow today. This is why they aren't part of, this is why Christians don't follow the 10 commandments or the old law. You know, this is why they eat pork and shellfish, and they wear cotton and linen blends and stuff like that. Because Jesus replaced the old law with these 2 commands. 1, love God with your whole heart, soul, mind, body, and strength, whatever. That one was primarily designed to replace, you shall have no other gods before me. And then 2, love your neighbor as yourself. Those were the 2 truly deeply important values that Jesus believed God wanted everybody to do. So, as is standard with Jehovah's Witnesses, especially governing body members, they take those commands and extrapolate and twist them around and warp them into something that's beneficial to them. Did Jesus say anything about modesty? No, he didn't tell anybody to, not wear tight pants or whatever. I guess you could argue that he said something about, like, not looking on people with lustful eyes or whatever. So I suppose it could be extrapolated from there a little bit. But he didn't ever say anything about being modest, or the idea that you were supposed to be modest was not found in those 2 new laws Jesus created. But, as I said, as is standard with Jehovah's Witnesses, they warp it, they change it into something that they want it to be.
But in verse 39, the second greatest commandment is this: you must love your neighbor as yourself.
Okay, and I know they're going to warp this one also, right? They're going to change this into somehow they're going to change it into you should be modest. I can't imagine how, but go on.
Well, this too becomes a very powerful reason to cultivate and display this quality of modesty.
Okay, not following the chain of logic here.
And interestingly, we see this aspect, that is modesty's effect on others, in the original language of the text. And the Watchtower said this. First of all, it defined modesty. It said in the...
Wait. I'm sorry. He's quoting from the Watchtower now? Why are we quoting the Watchtower? I thought you were telling us what the Bible had to say about this. Where did the Bible go? You know, I was doing research for my upcoming book that will be releasing sometime in the very near future. If you wonder if it's already released, if you're watching this down the line, owenmorgan.com/book. I'm going to put it in descriptions moving forward probably, but I'm writing a book about Jehovah's Witnesses, culture, doctrine, beliefs, ideals, that kind of thing, right? So anyways, I was doing research for it. I was reading about the cross and the stake. Because Jehovah's Witnesses famously believe that Jesus was killed on a stake rather than a cross. So I'm trying to figure out, is that true? Is that accurate? Are they correct about it? The answer is no, they're wrong. He didn't die on a stake. He died on a cross. That's just what it is. I'm sorry. Either way, I mean, assuming that he was real, he died on a cross. That was the common practice at the time. And the word stauros could apply to a stake or a cross. It's reasonable to assume it's talking about a cross since that was common back then. So anyways, I was going through it, like Jehovah's Witnesses' justification for why they believe that it's a stake, right? And what I found when I got there was, on their website, their justification came from like a 1962 Watchtower or something like that. And the Watchtower said, the New World Translation, which, by the way, is their translation of the Bible, the New World Translation translates this word that, describes what Jesus died on as stauros, which is a stake, a pole driven into the ground, not a cross. And I got to thinking, why did they quote their own publications to prove their beliefs? Why are we letting them cite the New World Translation's intricacies or nuances when no other, I assume, no other Bible translates it that way? Why did they pick the New World Translation if they wanted people to believe that they were correct on this point? All through the book, I cite out the wazoo. You guys have no idea how many citations. I'm putting like 100 citations in per chapter or some crazy thing like that. And I have like 26 chapters so far, I think. That's how many are eventually going to be in there, about 25 or 26. But anyways, 100 per chapter, about 25 chapters. That is a whole heck of a heap of citations. And through all of those citations, not once did I cite my own publications as evidence of a claim. Who does that? Seriously. Listen again to what Jeffrey Winder said. We're talking about the Bible, right? And Jesus, and what he believes and how he feels about whatever. How he feels about modesty. Okay? Go on, Jeffrey.
On others in the original language of the text. And the Watchtower said this.
Again, why are we quoting the Watchtower here? What does the Watchtower have to do with anything? He said we're looking at the original text. Why are we going to the Watchtower for this? This is fascinatingly actually something that Ray Franz, that ex-governing body member I mentioned from the 80s, mentioned in his book. Jehovah's Witnesses, the governing body, the writing department, will refer back to their own publications frequently to come to conclusions about things, to build doctrine or whatever. They will look back at what they already said to fortify their positions on things. And I found a prime example of it. I was so happy when I found that. Anyway, just absurd. Okay, let's listen to him tell us what the Watchtower said. Not the Bible, the Watchtower.
Aspect, that is, modesty's effect on others in the original language of the text. And the Watchtower said this. First of all, it defined modesty. It said, in the Bible, modesty refers to having a proper estimate of ourselves and an awareness of our limitations.
Proper estimate of ourselves, awareness of our limitations. Oh, okay. I've never heard modesty defined that way, but for the sake of argument, sure.
But then it went on to say, in the original language of the text, the emphasis seems to be on how that awareness should affect our behavior toward others.
Why are we quoting the Watchtower again? I'm just completely lost. Why is he not showing us the tablets, the clay tablets, or the manuscripts, the papyrus, or the whatevers to make his point, to prove what he's saying? They have pictures of all of this stuff. Jehovah's Witnesses do. They know how to do research. Why is the governing body's research reading what they've already written on the subject? Why is that the extent of their research? The level of absurdity here is on a scale I cannot even touch, for real.
So then, with that in mind, let's look at 3 examples that highlight how modesty benefits others. And all 3 of our examples focus on giving advice to others, which is what our text comments also talk about. For each example, we'll examine the situation. We'll decide what the modest course is in that situation, but then how does that modest course benefit others. So the first situation, very simply, a friend comes to us for advice. They're facing some challenge, some trial, or they're facing a complicated decision that they have to make, and they just want some input, some advice, and so they come to us.
Okay.
Well, what is the modest course in this situation?
Wait, modest? What would the modest course be in someone asking for advice? I don't understand. What does this have to do with modesty? Am I completely misunderstanding what the word modesty means? Well, let's ask the electric Google machine. Define modesty. The quality or state of being unassuming or moderate in the estimation of one's abilities. That's definition number 1. So I'm modest about what I know or what I can do, for example. The quality of being relatively moderate, limited, or small in amount, rate, or level. A very low amount of something, all right? Like I have a modest amount of computers in my house. I don't know. Behavior, manner, or appearance intended to avoid impropriety or indecency. I assumed that that was the one that he was using. How could this possibly apply to somebody giving you advice? What? 1's 2 cents. Thank God I escaped that cult. I knew at 10 years old it was a cult. Got out at 18 ASAP. Oh, that's lucky. I still believed it. I still believed it for years. I mean, I was kicked out at 18, but I still bought into the whole thing for like, I don't know, 4 years afterward or something. So it's hard to get past, but I'm glad you found your way out for sure. Kyle Davis. So Tony was like Trump. Yeah, he very much was. Anthony Morris. He kept shooting his mouth off and making things worse. Only difference is that the Jehovah's Witnesses actually got rid of Tony. Yeah, pretty much. That's my interpretation of it as well. I don't know. God, I just want to know what happened to him. I want to know where he went and why he was removed. I want to know the story. And I could have sworn the story would be revealed eventually. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses are nothing if not gossips. Like, what else is there to do? Everything else is banned. Can't watch rated R movies. Can't listen to certain music. You can't even dance, for real. I looked, again, for the book. I was reading about dancing, and dancing is banned. Well, some dancing is, not all dancing. The twist, the twist, explicitly banned within the religion. You're not allowed to do the twist. No joke. It's pagan. It's of pagan origin, is what they say. So what else is there to do? You can't dance, can't do anything. You're going to gossip. Anyway, I thought for sure that Tony Morris's story would come out, but nothing yet. You guys will definitely be the first ones to know when we hear something. Anyway, let's keep listening to this guy.
But some advice, and so they come to us.
Okay, so a friend wants some advice from us. Go on.
Well, what is the modest course in this situation?
There is no modest course because modesty does not apply to this situation.
Well, it's our text for today, isn't it? 1 Corinthians 4:6. Do not go beyond the things that are written. The study note on that scripture.
I'm sorry, what does that have to do with modesty? Don't go beyond what's written? That's a really interesting thing for him to say, too, by the way. Because that's all Jehovah's Witnesses do. Go beyond what's written. I'll give you a single example in a minute from Daniel, but let's keep listening.
Says this. This rule implies that God's servants are not to teach anything that goes beyond the laws and principles expressed in God's inspired word.
Dude, I love everything about it. Oh my God, he's just digging a grave for himself right now.
End quote. So then the modest course is to give our friend advice that is based on Bible principles. Or in other words, we defer to Jehovah in matters of counsel and guidance. Well, how does that modest course benefit our friend? Well, first of all, it benefits them because, honestly, our opinion could be wrong. Isn't that true?
Sure, I suppose.
Whereas God's word is perfect, and Jehovah's counsel is always beneficial.
This is fascinating, man. Don't go beyond what's written. And of course, Jehovah's Witnesses will interpret what's written for you. The funny thing about this is that Jehovah's Witnesses go beyond what's written constantly, especially in the book of Daniel. Oh my God. The book of Daniel contains like a bunch of apocalyptic visions, right? So apocalyptic visions was basically a genre of writing in the Bible. And Daniel was the earliest and most perfect example of it in the Bible. It was, as a genre of writing, truly in its prime in the book of Daniel, right? So the idea behind the genre is, by the way, this is a genre that is not exclusive to Bible books. It is outside of the Bible as well. What happens is the writer experiences a bizarre vision that they don't understand. An angel comes in to explain it to them. And then the angel gives basically prophecy of future events. It isn't necessarily like claiming to be some special prophetic thing. Like a lot of the time when this stuff was written, it was understood that it was written recently and it wasn't, it's not as old as it claims or whatever. It's just a genre of writing, like fiction would be, right? Except this genre is intended to make a specific point. So Jehovah's Witnesses interpret the book of Daniel differently than nearly anybody else. Book of Daniel has some apocalypses, and in this specific apocalypse, Jehovah's Witnesses claim about Nebuchadnezzar's statue that it's saying something very specific about modern day kingdoms. So Nebuchadnezzar has a dream, the king in Babylon, when Jews were exiled from Israel and brought to captivity in Babylon, right? So he was the king in Babylon who destroyed Jerusalem originally. He has all of these dreams, and he calls Daniel in to interpret them for him as like a man of God. He has special insight into this. And Daniel explains the vision to Nebuchadnezzar. He says, "The statue that you saw, head made of gold, arms of silver, waist of bronze, legs of iron, feet made of iron and clay." By the way, those are the like the tiers on my Patreon. Shout out to my Patreon if you guys want to check it out. That statue, as described, represents the kingdoms of the world, the empires that will come and fall, right? So Nebuchadnezzar was the golden head, the Babylonian Empire, the golden head. The arms were the Persian Empire, which came not long after that, 75 years or so, I think. And then the waist of bronze was the Greek Empire. The legs of iron were the Seleucid Empire, which was the Greek Empire after it broke apart. Like, what's his name? Alexander the Great conquered the entire area in the name of Greece, and then he died like 12 years later or something, and his 4 generals took over and split the entire thing into pieces. So the Seleucid Empire was one of Alexander the Great's broken up empires, and they controlled Jerusalem. That was what the legs of iron actually really were. That's what they were actually supposed to represent, according to scholars. And the feet of iron and clay? The Bible never says, never mentions. The book of Daniel doesn't say a word about it, because he didn't know which empire would come next. The answer was Rome in about 130 years or so. But he didn't know that, so he didn't say it. Right? So Jehovah's Witnesses note that this specific thing was not outlined exactly and directly in the verses. Who were the feet of iron and clay? What was the next empire? They see a blank spot there, which is supposed to be filled with Rome. And they say, hey, we can fill that blank spot. So they come in and say, The legs of iron are not the Seleucid Empire. The legs of iron are Rome. They're just skipping over the Seleucid Empire for some bizarre reason, forgetting it existed, apparently. And then they say the feet of iron and clay aren't Rome, as they actually were. They are the Anglo-American Empire. There's so much wrong with this. I talk about this at length in my book, but the point is, how did they get there? They misinterpreted and reinterpreted and bastardized the text to a degree that I can't even comprehend. It's ridiculous. They warped it completely out of proportion and made claims about it that are completely unjustified. That's just one simple example of Jehovah's Witnesses completely morphing the Bible. I mean, another way that they morph the Bible is they're teaching about 1914. You know, they believe that 1914 is the year that Jesus came back and they were chosen in 1919 and blah, blah, blah. Where'd all that come from? How did they come up with all of this? It's complete nonsense, all of it. So I think it's rich to hear a governing body member instruct people to be wary of reading beyond the text. I guess when he says the text, he means the Watchtower. He warns people not to read past what the Watchtower says, not the Bible, the Watchtower. Just bizarre. The hypocrisy is on an incredible scale.
But modesty also helps them because it helps us to be a good listener. We will modestly recognize that we need to know the facts. We need to understand the situation in its entirety as much as possible before we can identify which Bible principles our friend may wish to consider before they make their decision.
Right. So when he says Bible principles, he means Jehovah's Witness principles. The Bible isn't even part of the equation more often than not. Or if it is, a lot of the time, it's just bent out of shape completely. It's just like what's the word I'm looking for? Just a bizarre ass backwards interpretation. The logic that is stretched as far as it'll go. But it's said so in the Watchtower, so it's real. It has to be.
So then, in the end, modesty helps us because our counsel will be Bible-based and it will more closely hit the target of what they need.
Okay, I don't know what that has to do with modesty. And also, I love how he's saying you shouldn't be giving advice. You should be directing people to the Bible every time. Advice should not be a part of the equation at all. You should be telling the elders what they're dealing with and getting direction from aforementioned elders, apparently.
Situation number 2. How do things change depending on the subject matter of the advice being sought? So in this scenario, our friend is confiding in us a health problem that they're facing. And it's maybe a medical treatment that they're trying to decide on, and they're...
Oh boy, I know that he's probably going to bring up blood transfusions here. That's a really big one right now. There are some situations in which, blood-related things are a conscience matter. Like, for example, there are medicines derived from blood fractions. Like, medicines that use plasma to produce it or whatever. And Jehovah's Witnesses used to be opposed to that, but have basically said it's up to you. If you think Jehovah will let you into the new system after you've taken this, this blood fraction, be my guest. I mean, it's up to you. If you think so, you're putting your immortal soul at risk, but okay. That's kind of the idea behind it. So maybe that's what they're talking about. It is really windy out, and I just got an alert from my thing. Hang on, let me see what the Alexa says. Aerial flood advisory in effect until January 10th. Huh. Aerial flood advisory? I've never heard of an aerial flood advisory before. That's bizarre. Yeah, it's raining cats and dogs out there. I don't think I've ever seen it this windy before. Maybe anywhere in my life. It's crazy. Anyways, all right, let's keep listening to old Jeffrey Winder here.
They're looking for some input. What's the modest course in this situation? Well, we genuinely feel for our friend and we want to help them in any way that we can. But here too, the principle, the underlying principle of 1 Corinthians 4:6 applies. That is, not going beyond the limits of our authority. Well, what is our authority in this kind of a situation regarding health matters? Well, the Watchtower said, when faced with a health problem, each adult Christian must carry his own load of responsibility in choosing treatment, end quote.
So if it's a conscience matter, like you're trying to decide if you should take like a medicine that uses blood fractions, you shouldn't be asking for someone else's advice. You should just be making the decision on your own, okay?
Well, then, keeping that in mind, modesty will help us to think carefully before we offer our own medical advice or before we discourage them from taking a prescribed treatment.
I don't know what this has to do with modesty. I'm just like in the dark here. I don't understand. Am I missing something? I read the definitions of modesty and none of them fit what he's talking about right now.
But what can we do to help them? Well, certainly we can listen empathetically. We can offer them our sincere, heartfelt sympathy and comfort. We can think about what practical help we can give them, and we can reassure them of our support for whatever decision they should choose to make.
I don't understand what the point of this is. So he's saying, don't tell people your opinion on conscience matters? Okay. Well, a lot of dances are quote-unquote conscience matters for Jehovah's Witnesses, for example. Like, the degree of paganism involved in the dance should disqualify it for you, but you're the one that has to ultimately determine if it has too much paganism or whatever. That kind of thing.
And how does that modest course benefit them? Well, it dignifies them in that it allows them the right to make the decision for themselves. It also protects them from...
I mean, they're asking your opinion. Are you kidding me? It dignifies somebody by allowing them to make their own decision. Thus, you should not give them your opinion on anything ever. What?
It also protects them from any undesirable consequences in the event that our medical advice might not be the right one in their case.
When he says our, he's speaking of like the royal you, the royal our. He's saying Jehovah's Witnesses, not as an organization, but as people. If they take my advice as a Jehovah's Witness and it was the wrong thing, then it's not on us, basically. I mean, I'm just saying, like, you know, people have friends who give them opinions and ideas and positions and advice and all that other stuff when they need it. There's nothing wrong with that. And it's completely ass backwards to me that this dude is fighting this tooth and nail.
But it also provides them the love and the reassurance and the support that they need at that challenging time. Situation number 3. How do things change depending on who needs the assistance? So in this scenario, an elder, maybe a work overseer, becomes aware that a married sister on his crew or in his department is facing some challenge and maybe is in need of assistance.
Okay. Well, I know that this is kind of a broad thing that he's laying down, but I'm going to assume he's talking about domestic violence, right? A sister's in need of assistance on his work crew. Does that mean domestic violence, or?
Well, what is the modest course in this situation? Well, as we mentioned earlier, modesty includes being aware of our limitations, including being aware of the limitations of our authority. So what is our authority here? It's interesting that recently the Watchtower has helped us to see that there's a difference between the authority Jehovah gives elders and that which he gives husbands.
Oh, isn't that interesting? The Watchtower tells us that blah, blah, blah. I thought you guys followed the Bible. Why are you following the Watchtower once again? This is cult-like behavior right here if I have ever seen it. This is nuts. Like, they're not even trying to pretend anymore, are they? They're just quoting the Watchtower all willy-nilly now.
Compare with me, please, these two scriptures. The first one is in 1 Peter chapter 5, in verse 2. So speaking about the authority that Jehovah gives to shepherds, to elders, 1 Peter 5:2 says, "Shepherd the flock of God under your care."
Shepherd the Flock of God is the name of their elders' handbook, their manual or whatever.
Serving as overseers. Keep that in mind as we turn to Ephesians chapter 5.
By the way, no one is supposed to even know the elders' manual exists, let alone what its name is, so.
And let's see what authority Jehovah gives to husbands in verse 23.
Oh, I see. So, okay. So what he's saying here, it took me a second to understand what he was getting at. He says if there's a woman on your work crew that needs help with something, I guess it's not, I'm guessing that he's not talking about domestic violence situation. He's talking a woman is dealing with some personal issue that she's not sure about. Should you offer your recommendation, your advice? The answer, and it includes women too, by the way. Women should not be getting advice from women. Women should be getting advice from their husband and nobody else, just their husbands. And if you think this woman should do something, then you should tell her husband that you think that she should do this thing. Dude, where is this Korok seed? I can't find this thing. Anyways, yeah, that's absolutely whacked out and bizarre and unbiblical and extreme. I'm sorry.
Ephesians 5:23, it says, "Because a husband is head of his wife, just as the Christ is head of the congregation, he being a savior of this body."
Dude, I knew that's where they were going with it.
So comparing these two, we can see Jehovah, for elders, they are shepherds, whereas the husband is the head of his wife. Well, how does this apply then? How does this help our elder in our scenario?
Just one more quick note on this. You know what's fascinating? You know that Jehovah's Witnesses have to wear hijabs sometimes? It's another thing I'm bringing up in my book. I go into great detail about why and the verses that they use and all that other junk. They wear hijabs. They wear head coverings specifically. If they're taking the lead in spiritual matters, when there is a qualified, eligible male who is baptized nearby, then they have to wear a hijab, effectively, a head covering, to show deference to his authority over her, really. So, for example, women are encouraged to bring people into the religion, right? They're encouraged to, do what's called Bible studies. If a woman invites her Bible study, really the Watchtower study more than anything, over to the house to do their study, and the husband is home, not he's working or something, he's out back working on the shed or something like that, or maybe he's hosting his own Bible study or something, I don't know. If the husband is there and the wife is hosting the Bible study instead, she must wear a hijab to show that she recognizes his authority over her, really. That is insane, right?
Well, his knowing the difference between the authority given here helps him to not overstep his authority as an overseer and as an elder. Of course, each situation is different, but depending on the situation, if this truly is a personal matter, he may very well modestly refrain from giving advice at all. He may not get involved at all. He may recognize this feels like husband territory.
You know what this means, right? I mean, I don't know if this is explicitly like what he's trying to get at with this, but here's what it means. Here is a consequence, at the very least, of this thing that he's laying down. If a kid is taken advantage of by somebody in the congregation, Jehovah's Witnesses have been like sued over and over and over and over again for the way they mishandle those cases. The Elder's Handbook says now, after all these years, that elders are not to discourage anybody from calling the police. It was part of the culture for years and years, like decades, since the beginning, that you don't involve police. You just don't. You don't bring police into the situation ever. If you bring police in, then you've got secular authorities poking around, and that's just not good, basically, is the way they view it. So if a kid is taken advantage of, and the wife or the mom of the kid asks an elder, should I call the police? The elder cannot give her advice on this. He will have to have the husband make the final choice. It's the husband's responsibility. I'm sorry, man, that is straight up psychotic. What is wrong with these people? Really? Absolutely insane.
And I'm going to allow her to work with her husband in this matter. And how does that benefit the couple? Well, it preserves her husband's authority, doesn't it?
This is psychotic.
It also deepens her respect for her husband, as he is the one that can help to care for and help her in this situation. It keeps the strength of their marriage intact and their view of the sanctity of marriage.
The view of sanctity of marriage, it keeps it intact. I mean, what he's saying is he wants the woman to know her place, basically, right? He's telling women not to step out of line, or not. He's telling elders not to step out of line and give advice to a woman because that's her husband's place. That's crazy.
And it also avoids even an inkling of an emotional attachment forming between two people who are not married.
Giving advice is risky because it might form an emotional attachment. Really?
Well, these are just a few examples that highlight how our displaying modesty benefits others. And that is one of the most powerful motivations and reasons for displaying modesty. And sometimes considering how modesty benefits others gives us clarity of mind on what the modest course is and gives us the motivation to take that course. And as we...
I don't understand what modesty has to do with any of this. Again, what is he even talking about? How does modesty link into this?
Considered, this is not just an alternate way of looking at it. This is not just a novel approach to showing modesty, but rather it is based on the second greatest commandment of the law. That is
No, it isn't.
To love our neighbor as ourselves.
It's not based on that. What are you talking about? This is based on love your neighbor as yourselves. What? To not instruct a woman to call the police if her child has been taken advantage of. That is loving your neighbor as yourself. What the hell is happening right now?
Well, dear friends, we thank you for your sincere efforts to show modesty and the good example that you set in this regard. May Jehovah continue to bless your efforts to cultivate this important quality and thereby help you to be a true gift to your brothers and sisters.
That is insane. That was an insane video. Oh my God. Fascinating though, right? I don't know. It's a lot more tame than Tony Morris's talks. He used to just go off the rails with some of the stuff that he said. It was crazy. I mean, this is just messed up, but it's more measured and planned out, if you will. Absolutely fascinating, man. You know what? As a bonus, let's talk about their position on dancing. Proper dancing is not condemned, it says. proper dancing, not condemned. In the Holy Scriptures, there's no outright condemnation of dancing in itself. When divine disapproval came upon dancers, as in the case of the Israelites dancing before a golden calf, it was the idolatry associated with the dancing that was wrong, though there may have been a factor of abandon in the dancing. What does abandon mean in this context? Okay. Such dancing brought dishonor to Jehovah. By the way, this is from 1962, this article, but it stands. It's currently valid doctrine. How then should a Christian view modern dancing? God in his written word has set down certain commandments and principles that should guide a Christian in all his ways. The Christian, then, has a guidebook for determining whether a particular dance or the way a dance is performed is proper or improper. This is one of those conscience matter things I was talking about. When a new dance style comes along, how would a Christian go about determining whether his participation would be proper or improper? Here are the determining factors to tell if a dance is okay or not. God, this is crazy. First, find out what the dance is. What movements are involved? How is the dance described by observers and in newspapers and magazines? If the origin and development of the dance can be learned, this may prove enlightening. What? Check the facts learned with Bible principles. If the dance moves can be learned, then it shouldn't be done? I missed this on my first round of reading this. So, ballroom dancing is a no? Like salsa dancing, the tango, the waltz, are those banned, I guess? Wow, this is wild. To illustrate, suppose a young adult or a parent has heard about the twist, the new dance happening. I'm not even sure what the twist is exactly. How to do the twist. Okay, so this is the twist, apparently, right here. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This is a learned dance move. And as such, not great. Probably shouldn't be doing it because it's learned. All right, let's speed this puppy up. Okay, so bend at the knees, bend at the knees. Twist at the hips, twist at the hips. All right. Throw your arms out and do the chicken. Okay. Yep. Okay. That's the twist, I suppose, huh? And Jehovah's Witnesses do not like the twist. It is forbidden. Not for being provocative, but because it's got pagan roots. Well, observe how people describe it. You'll likely find frequent comments in newspapers, perhaps such as this one. The twist, stemming from a dance called the Madison that erupted a number of years ago in Philadelphia, is a rhythmic, shoulder-shaking, hip-swiveling step in which the partners synchronize their movements but do not touch. There's a footnote on this. What does a footnote say? I gotta know. New York Times, October 19th, 1961. Okay, interesting. Wow, they're actually citing sources for once. One popular American magazine devoted many pages to the dance and said, to the song's insistent beat, the partners rock back and forth on the balls of their feet while frantically twisting their hips. If local news media shed little light on the matter, one could find publications in a public library that discuss recent trends. Thus, if one opened the 1962 Britannica Book of the Year, he would find several comments, including this, quote, there was also a revival during 1961 of two teenage dances, the twist and the fish. I don't know the fish. They were publicly condemned by several U.S. clergymen. Why do we care what U.S. clergymen have to say? You're saying, like, church leaders in the United States? Why do we care about them? Jehovah's Witnesses shouldn't have anything to do with that. In late fall, the twist in particular suddenly took on the characteristics of a major dance craze. It features a minimum of movement of the feet and a maximum of bodily gyrations. Okay. Many of the news reports will likely have a few words about the origin of the new dance, and this is true of the twist. Okay, actually, this is the quote that I use in my book. The youngsters at a certain New York nightclub have revived the twist and parodied it into a replica of some ancient tribal purity rite. Really. Some kids at a New York nightclub changed the twist around to, like, mimic an ancient tribal purity rite. I don't believe you. I'm sorry. I think this is nonsense. The dancers scarcely ever touch each other, move either feet. Everything else, however, moves. The upper body sways forward and backward. Hips, shoulders twirl erotically. Ooh, erotically, okay. While the arms thrust in, out, up, and down. Okay. That nightclub and its revised twist, which is the ancient tribal purity rite, of course, further explained this same news report. Quote, might well have remained just another flesh spa for the mid-down beatnik crowd, end quote. And had it not been popularized with cafe society by a newspaper society editor. So they're saying the paganism wouldn't have spread if it hadn't been popularized by media. So what have you learned about this dance? In this example, we've found that the dance craze mainly involves bodily gyrations, and that words used to describe them are frantic, sensual, and erotic. You've also learned what kind of persons developed the dance, and that it's basically an imitation of some pagan tribe's dance, involving gestures of sexually suggestive nature. They say some pagan tribes dance. Which ones? Tell me which pagan tribes you're talking about. Specifically. Give me names. It's completely fabricated. It's made up. Now, what are the Bible principles and commandments that will illuminate the facts you've learned? If you do not know, ask a mature Christian. That means a baptized Jehovah's Witness. Or a ministerial servant or elder. Or use the Watchtower Publications Index to direct you to those principles. You will find many. For instance, does the dance involve conduce to holy conduct? I've never heard that word before. Conduce? What does that mean? Help bring about. Okay. I guess I'm just not, informed on that one. God's word says, become holy yourselves in all your conduct. God's word speaks out against cravings for sensual pleasure. Well, why did he put those sensual pleasures in us then? If he didn't want us to take part in them or find them interesting in any way. It requires modesty for Christian women. Christians are told to consider and practice whatever things are chaste. So there's your answer. You wonder if Jehovah's Witnesses ban dancing? The answer is yes. Most of the time, because of its pagan roots. The twist is banned, among other dances, many others. That is insane. Get help, people. Again, this is written in 1962. It's valid doctrine to this day. They have not retracted it. Charles Taze Russell used pyramidology, so, this pseudoscientific idea that pyramids are this special thing that God created for us. He used pyramidology to come to the conclusion that 1914 was the date that, the end was going to come, basically. He had a whole bunch of other ideas about what the pyramids revealed, or what God revealed through the Pyramid of Giza, specifically. Jehovah's Witnesses didn't have to retract that. They could have just gone about their day and pretended it didn't happen. Instead, they chose to issue a retraction. You know why? It's improper doctrine. They don't want people going back in their library and finding stuff that's incorrect. So they will either remove it or retract it. They'll issue a retraction, say this is wrong. We learned more, or the person that wrote this wasn't right, or some other thing. This is still on their Watchtower online library system. It's valid doctrine. So if you're a Jehovah's Witness, no dancing. No talking to ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and no dancing. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. I'm fascinated by this stuff, man. It's crazy. And keep a lookout for my new book. It should be coming out very, very soon. The next, few weeks to a month, maybe. So, owenmorgan.com/book. And check out my Patreon also. owenmorgan.com/Patreon. Anyway, let me know what you think about it in the comments. Is this just so interesting to me?